A battlefield medic that carries 2 guns. Thought most of those were pacifists. Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and we're kicking off our Legacy month by looking at one of the figures left over from Legacy. This is Minerva. Of course, many of you can probably guess from that name that this is a female character. But Minerva's not a new character per se. She has been with the franchise for a long time. Minerva first appeared as a Transformer in 1987. So either 87 or 88. 88, rather. Now that I rethink about it, 88. As she was one of the Headmaster Jr. toys that was released at that time. However, she was redone when she was brought to America, given a different paint job and such, and was released here as Nightbeat. There's a bit of a story to go along with that, and we'll kind of cover it here. Especially to explain to many of you who Minerva is. Minerva is a character that appeared in the Japanese series Super God MasterForce, which featured a lot of the Headmaster Jr. characters, along with the early Pretenders and the Power Masters, and the combiner known as Piranacon, called in Japan as King Neptune. Minerva was a human child who, along with her friends Ghost Shooter and Cab, joined up with befriended the Autobot Metalhawk, another character we will be covering later on in the month. And they were thus gifted Transector bodies, which is basically a lifeless Transformer body, and they were given master braces that allowed them to change into their exosuits that would form the head. Minerva, out of all of them, was the only girl that joined up. She was the daughter of the ambassador for the country of Port Marta, who was assigned to Japan. So as such, she was a rather privileged child, but also had a deep care and respect for humanity. So her willingness to do good is what drove her to join the Transformer conflict. However, realizing the horrors of war firsthand sort of put her on edge a bit, as she was not necessarily a fighter and certainly did not want to kill. So in a lot of cases, Minerva would hold back from the conflict and usually serve as a battlefield medic, treating the injured humans from the sidelines and only entering the conflict when it was absolutely necessary. At the end of the MasterForce anime, she and the others had their links to their Transformer bodies severed. The Transformers that they had all been portraying gained their own sentience, based sort of on the experiences from their human hosts, and took their names as well, as they went off for other adventures, as Minerva would appear in later series. As stated earlier, Minerva would have been released in '88 with the other toys. Cab and Ghost Shooter would get minimal changes when they were released here in America. Cab would be renamed as Hosehead, and Ghost Shooter would be called Siren. But Minerva would get completely redone over, and instead of being a battlefield medic, would become a detective and be given the name of Nightbeat. This was done pretty much due to the fact that Hasbro knew from their own experiences in the toy market that girl characters in a male-dominated toy line do not sell very well, as they kind of had the numbers to show it from their respective competing line of G.I. Joe. Now, there was a video posted on the channel Half the Battle where the host Timmer did discuss a lot of the 80s toy lines and showed off a comparable ratio of how many of the toy lines from the 80s that ran concurrently with G.I. Joe had female characters. Now, of course, G.I. Joe was one that had some of the most females, but the ratio of male to female characters in it was actually quite low when compared to some others. So, interesting video. I do recommend you check it out. Now, of course, this Minerva here is not a headmaster. She's a retooling of Elita 1 from the earlier Legacy line, and she's only available at Walgreens stores, if your Walgreens bothers to stock up on toys. Now, there's been some debate among the fandom as to which figure came first, Minerva or Nightbeat, due to the fact that they both were released at the same time. I'm in the camp that leans more to Minerva came before Nightbeat, partially due to the way that the head sculpt figure is. So we're going to remove the head here and show it off here. Now, of course, the original Minerva would be painted up more similar to how this toy is. So she'd be in something of a more predominantly red and pink outfit with some splotches of white on it. We also got Siren here for a close proximity, and you'll notice on Nightbeat over here that the chest piece is a little more prominent. It sticks out a little bit more, kind of implying room for her breasts, despite the fact that in the MasterForce cartoon, Minerva was only about 12 to 13. So, it's a little bit on the large sides, but it kind of shows that it was earlier designed to be a female character, based on a female character. So, that's my belief, but it's also an opinion, so take it as you may. Alright, now let's take a look at Minerva's accessories. She comes with 2 guns, as Larry pointed out. The first one is, of course, this translucent gun. And of course, she can hold both guns in either hand separately. I just had it combined, as you saw for the thumbnail. And I just didn't bother to separate it. And then, of course, her second accessory is this other gun. Kind of strange that Hasbro didn't consider the character's history and at least make it only 1 gun. And then give her something else to be a more appropriate accessory, but Oh well, can't argue with it. This gun obviously is made in clear plastic, going by the hand grip, and was painted black. So hopefully the paint doesn't wear off very easily. And lastly, she has a third accessory here on her backside. And it is a light bar. And of course, since Hasbro likes to package these guys with their accessories all wrapped up in tissue paper, make sure you check that tissue paper real good to make sure you get everything. That way you don't unnecessarily throw out any pieces. Okay, with that all out of the way, let's take a look here at Minerva's articulation. And she has about what is typical for a deluxe class figure. Her head can turn from side to side, and it will look up and down. It's on a bit of a ball joint. Her arms will raise out so far to the side, and they can rotate all the way, but the car kibble tends to get in the way, so it really limits the range of motion with her arms. You can bend her arms at the elbow a little more than 90 degrees, and she does have a swivel at the bicep, so she has G.I. Joe style battle grip. You can twist her at the hips. Well, it is stated in the anime that Minerva did study a fair amount of dance. Of course, since she's half Japanese, half French, she did study traditional Japanese dance. That was covered in the anime. Yes, I did happen to see it. Unfortunately, the first version I saw of it was a very poor English dub. I definitely don't recommend that one. At any rate, continuing on, we can spread her legs apart about so far. A little extra plastic on her thighs tends to interfere. She does have a very slight thigh cut. That extra plastic, again, makes it a little hard to work with. Her legs can be raised up at the hip about 90 degrees, and she can bend at the knee 90 degrees. She does have a little articulation at the ankle, but that's more for transforming her than anything useful. Okay, we're going to transform Minerva. And like we said, since she's basically a retool and repaint of Elita 1, she pretty much transforms the same way. Start by rotating her legs at the hip so that they're facing the other way. Then you'll come here to her back and you're going to raise up this portion. Get her raised up and kind of lined up with the windshield. Then you'll get her, you're going to reposition her shoulders so they come down here and help form the front end of the car. Just like that. Give me a second here. I dropped the instructions out of my lap. Once you got that done, we're going to raise this section outwards a bit so that we can get the rear spoiler section folded out. Then we'll kind of reset everything downwards so that the hood of the front bumper rests against Minerva's head. And you're going to come down here to her arms. They will want you to make sure to fold her arms inwards so that this hole is showing out at the side. And then, of course, something that we didn't show is that you can rotate her hands. So you rotate her hands so that they're facing the right way. And then you can bend the arms at the elbow just slightly so that they connect to the shoulder pieces that form the front fender. There will also be a little post that can connect to the car kibble. So, we gently work with that. And get that in. There we go. Now, of course, once we've done that, we're going to come down here to the backs of her legs. And these pieces down here should fold out of her leg. Looks like gravity did that for me. Then we'll come down here, press her legs together. So there's a connector right about at her knee. Then we'll grab the car kibble on the side of her legs, and it will pop free and fold forward. Should be able to connect it to the plate on her arms, and the red portion should connect to the spoiler. And then once you've done that, you come back here and fold her feet inwards. And then there we go. Minerva is now in her car form. Of course, to complete the look, we'll need to attach the light bar. And of course, on the sides, either down low at the base or back here at the fender, you can attach her guns. And then she's ready to roll into battle. And for those of you who might be interested, this is what the American version looks like in its car mode. As you can guess, she's meant to more represent her Japanese form. I would show you that because I have seen it, but I don't have the original Minerva. I've seen her at many different, at a couple of Transformer shows. But a complete packaged Minerva runs about $2,000. Maybe Larry should have said that instead at the opening. Getting down to my thoughts, what do I think of Minerva? Minerva was always an interesting character for me, because I did enjoy her in the animated series. Of course, after I saw the Japanese version, I liked her a little better, since the poor English dub was using the Americanized names for as many of them as they could. And as I stated earlier, was also very poorly dubbed. But Minerva is an interesting character in the sense of how she wants to help humanity, but is somewhat scarred and afraid of the spoils of war. So in a lot of ways, she's like a lot of other medical professionals that have been involved in war things. Sort of like what we see on MASH, how many of the doctors are affected psychologically by what they have to endure in war, and to treat those that are innocently harmed by the effects of war. This is the first figure of Minerva as a transforming figure to be released for her in nearly 40 years, so she's almost like Snapdragon, a character that's been somewhat forgotten in the media. There have been, of course, a lot of other toys made of Minerva, both of her human form and the Transformer form. But this is the first commercially available Minerva figure that is a Transformer to be released. Because Hasbro did also make this version of Minerva, Nightbeat, available as a mail-away in Japan. They labeled it as Minerva Nightbeat. and sort of tried to pass it off as the same character. Which, on technicality, it could be, but nowhere in the animated series did Minerva get an upgrade to her body to change it. So, definitely, if you're a fan of any of the Japanese series, this is definitely one to seek out. Granted, it would have been nice if it was a little more original instead of being a retool. But beggars certainly can't be choosers, and not all of us can afford to drop $2,000 on a classic Japanese toy. So if you can find one at your local Walgreens, consider picking up Minerva. And that's our review of the Legacy version of Minerva. I hope you all enjoyed it. And please do remember that if you like the content that we feature here on this channel, please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.